Dear netizens, this video is about the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine issue. I think there will be a ceasefire in the short term. Currently, a key puzzle in the field of science and technology, which remains unsolved, is that continues to challenge experts, is the communist agreement between Ukraine and the United States. Let's pay attention to some interesting details. It seems there are still some disputes, but the American side believes Ukraine must sign it. That is the entire mindset of Trump and his supporters and his followers. Let me explain it to everyone. Any talk of capturing big enterprises to encircle China is all false. There is no such thing. Join Russia with China. This will not happen. Putin is not foolish enough. In order to let you successfully and effectively drive a wedge between him and China and create a significant rift, because given his current national power, without China's power and China's support, it would indeed be tantamount to self-destruction. So this matter cannot be achieved in any way. But what exactly does Russia need? What Russia needs is, he heard that on the 3rd anniversary victory will be declared, that they have won. The 4 things that he desires, he says he has already achieved a few things, including Ukraine not being able to join NATO. He has gained Ukraine's support and trust, the vast, expansive and diverse Russian territory, connecting Crimea with mainland Russia, connected all together as one. As a result, the United States and the West will lift their sanctions against him. He will also restore most of his assets, properties, and belongings. And he wants to come to power, quickly revive his economy too. Because I've watched those TV series, that is, those on platforms like YouTube and Telegram. Russia simply cannot sustain itself. It was already, people's lives are unbearably miserable. And his armored vehicles, those reserves, tank reserves, are almost depleted. That war, he definitely cannot sustain it. In the past week, I discovered Ukraine is gradually gaining the upper hand. On the front lines, before and after Trump came to power, he used all his strength to attack. That was obvious. In the end, they couldn't even take down the Red Army village. And now Ukraine, in this round, is launching a series of counterattacks, which are indeed quite effective. But anyway, talking this pointless. Without the support of the United States, Ukraine cannot sustain the fight. It's that simple. Trump hopes to gain $500 billion worth of Ukrainian assets. Trumpy, don't think that. Trump's thoughts are very complicated. What he thinks is very simple. First of all, he genuinely believes that he truly and deeply that Ukraine cannot win and will eventually fall into Russia's hands, because he says Russia is only using 1/5 of its power to fight Ukraine and hasn't destroyed Ukraine because Russia is merciful and hasn't tried its best to fight Ukraine. Ukraine is doomed. Since it's doomed, why not just negotiate peace? He really thinks this way. It's really not that complicated. And Biden gave a very significant and impactful speech to the nation. Gave what he said was over $300 billion, but actually it was found to be $100 billion, possibly adding the promised $150 billion. Some haven't been delivered yet. He wants to get this money back, afraid suffering losses, and he is indeed unwilling to take risks for Ukraine. He won't try not to guarantee Ukraine's safety. Moreover, he feels the European front is dangerous. He will withdraw troops from the Baltic Triangle. Listen to me. Europe, pack your own clothes. He won't spend money on Europe anymore, ever. Or possibly, go now. Go, sacrifice, potentially endanger American lives. It's none of America's business at all, or any of its concern. This is his thinking. His thinking is just that simple. Anyone who talks about capturing big enterprises is absurd. That's how Trump is. The most important thing now is to get this money back. It's very distressing. Trump was near Washington on Saturday. At the conservative CPAC conference, we want rare earths and oil. Anything we find is, this person went bankrupt. He owes me money. I take whatever I can get. Do you understand? Go to his house and take the tables and chairs to prevent the money from disappearing. Anything we get at all, really. Whatever we dig up, we work very hard to get this money back. or haven't gotten it yet. Ensure that this money is safe, so it can be got future. It's that simple and straightforward, easy to grasp, and very easy to comprehend. Ukrainian President Zelensky on Sunday, on the eve of the 3-year anniversary of Russia's invasion, held a press conference in Kiev. I hope Trump can understand each other and communicate effectively. For Ukraine, in support of, to give some miming right in order, the United States is not the problem, because it very much needs the US guarantee if it is indeed truly said. And what can guarantee the existence of Ukraine as an independent country, or perhaps even will Ukraine become a vassal state of Russia? First of all, some people say Russia likely won't recover even in 10 years. That's not true. If the sanctions are relaxed, Russia's economy will quickly rebound. As for the hundreds of thousands of deaths, actually the deaths are not that many. 200,000 died, with 500,000 to 600,000 injured. Don't forget, if he indeed actually controls Ukraine this time and takes back to Belarus, he gains over 40 million people. Is there any problem with military strength? There's no problem with military strength. But it takes a few years for the armaments. If he has money, if Trump potentially lifts the sanctions and gives him back the money, he will work hard on it. In a few years, he can rebuild the armaments. I can tell you, Trump refuted what the US proposed, saying it was using natural resources to fund the $500 billion request. Because the US provided the money, it was clearly stated at the time that it was aid, not debt. This time, he is willing to sign the $500 billion, but this is because you need to give me security guarantees. That's what he wants to say. And in fact, the amount given is far less than what the US demanded, only $100 billion. I will not sign any agreement that requires 10 generations of Ukrainians to pay the price. Actually, what he won't do is, hey, this is not about repaying money. You need to understand it's about jointly developing these Ukrainian mineral deposits and other resources. The US gets a third of the money. If you can't extract it, this money will not be repaid. Ukraine cannot possibly repay hundreds of billions of dollars to the US. This is simply impossible. I can tell everyone, during World War II, before the US entered the war, they enacted a Lend-Lease Act. The Lend-Lease Act was about providing supplies such as food, weapons, and other necessary resources to Britain for the war. Later, it was discovered that the Soviet Union was about to be defeated. They also provided supplies to the Soviet Union for the war. The Soviet Union was able to continue fighting because the US continuously supplied them with resources. So what happened after the war? The UK spent 10 to 20 years repaying the debt. Several years after the war, the United Kingdom still had a few more food rationing. The British people wondered whether they were a victorious nation or a defeated one. Germany's economy recovered while the UK was still rationing. And the Soviet Union didn't even repay a single ruble. Indeed. If it were China, would they have to repay? Of course, they obviously wouldn't have to repay. Even before joining the war, there was the Lend-Lease Act, lending things to China. Of course, there was no repayment. How could this money be repaid? And this time it wasn't a loan. It was clearly stated as a gift. It's estimated that he will hold talks with Trump. The agreement will be signed within the next week. The two will meet to sign the agreement. What he is saying now is to ensure he won't repay this money. If that money can't be extracted, the mines are gone, it's not my problem. Because some mines are on Russian-occupied territory. Don't say at that time that those mines can't be extracted. And then chase me for money. I end up having to pay instead. Such a thing will not happen. Ukraine hopes to obtain security guarantees. This is indeed part of the anti-production agreement. I give you over $100 billion. You need to ensure, what will you give him? What do you have to offer him? Trump will not always be the president of the United States, but Ukraine needs lasting peace. How can the United States guarantee Ukraine? The United States is unwilling. Trump is unwilling to guarantee Ukraine. On that day, Trump's Secretary of the Treasury on a very important and significant mission with great responsibility, proceeded on his way. He said he would only send some soldiers, military personnel to protect those anti-production areas, and not to protect Ukraine in any way whatsoever. So is it, for example, if Ukraine is invaded again, the United States must again provide military aid to Ukraine. One of the ways is like this. Currently, right now in Ukraine, nearly 20% of anti-production resources. These are anti-production resource maps. Half of the rare earth anti-production is in the occupied areas of Ukraine. Resources in Russian-occupied areas could be worth trillions of dollars. Most of Ukraine's resources are located in the industrial region of Donbas. Now in Russian hands, so what to do? How to calculate? It needs to be made clear. I don't owe you money. All right. On the 24th, on the third anniversary of the war in Russia, Zelensky stated, "If peace can be achieved, and you need me to give up my position, I am absolutely ready. If I can perhaps join NATO. We will resign immediately. I currently don't want to discuss him at length. I am focusing on addressing Ukraine's current issues, not for 20 years. I will not hold power for decades. At any time, actually. I think of my idol Elon Musk. Makes me feel very ashamed that I have this idol. He said Zelensky is not conducting elections. Cannot conduct elections. Think about it. 20% of the territory is in Russian hands. Do these people have the right to vote? There are 8 to 9 million Ukrainians abroad. How to vote? Thirdly, you ask people to gather to vote what to use against missiles, drone attacks, causing casualties. How can voting be done in such dire circumstances? To commemorate Russia's full-scale invasion on the 24th, leaders from several other European countries were deceived. This summit might announce that if they cannot ensure Ukraine's continued independence and sovereignty, they will continue to support Ukraine regardless of the United States. The United States gave up. They will all continue. However, Ukraine must give these minerals to the United States. Only then can the United States not prevent European countries in Europe from providing American weapons to Ukraine. Speaking of yesterday again, Iran came out to deny this statement regarding the issue of cutting Starlink. First of all, and importantly, those people say my news is inaccurate. It's not. I have already told you this was reported by Reuters. Reuters reported that there were 3 sources saying this. We generally consider it having a certain level of credibility, and I have already explained that this information was reported by Reuters. The responsibility lies with Reuters. You can choose believe it, choose not to believe. Secondly, there are several scenarios. There are 3 scenarios. What do you believe it is? First, this is completely false. There was no threat to cut Starlink. Then, Iran came out to deny it. This could be one possibility. This could be possible. This might be. Reuters made a complete blunder, and people were misinformed. This is possible. The second possibility is not that there was indeed a threat to cut Starlink. Iran must have known, and Iran must be lying. They refuse to admit it because this is too serious for their rescue efforts. This is the second possibility. The third possibility is the Trump administration threatened to cut Starlink. Threatened is Ukraine. This possibility did not ask Iran must. There is absolutely no necessity for you to inquire about this matter, as everything has already been taken care of and all the necessary information is readily available for you. Iran must undoubtedly take decisive and swift action. As the Minister of Defense indeed said, when the time comes, you can 393-0. No need to seek consent to cut Starlink. So Iran might not know, resigned on the 3rd anniversary, launched 267 attack drones. Iranian drones began attacking Ukraine, the largest attack since then. He mentioned that it would likely be within a week or so. How many were attacked in total? Approximately 1150 drones. Approximately 1,400 system bombs, in total, overall. Especially glide system bombs, very serious and large, 35 missiles, weekly attacks that occur very frequently. These people are indeed very funny. They are the beggar faction. It turns out Zelensky said approximately 100 billion. This is very irresponsible. 100 billion is literally 100 billion. He deliberately said approximately 100 billion. What we gave him is not a whole. No one said it was a whole. It's a ground. It doesn't need to be repaid. Now we need to ask those senators, did you vote for this money exactly? This Zelensky? If so, he should be fired. I tell everyone, it's not just senators who voted. Congressmen also voted. It was almost unanimously agreed upon. Please fire all the senators and congressmen. This is EU members preparing 20 billion euros in emergency aid, Ukraine, to increase defense spending, including relaxing financial regulations to buy artillery shells, about air defense system, high-precision strike missiles, $10 billion needed in the short term, in case peace talks just fail. When the US stops providing funds, Ukraine can still continue to fight for a period of time. The European Council says a special summit on the 6th of next month to discuss issues of Ukraine and European defense. I tell everyone what Putin is doing exactly now. He says NATO's eastward expansion threatens him. What does it really mean? NATO's eastward expansion has caused the revival of the Russian Empire to be obstructed. It's not that NATO wants to attack Russia, because if NATO covers some of the areas that were once part of the Russian Empire, then attacking them means attacking NATO. Do you understand that he wants to act before NATO arrives future, to take these places in order? He no longer says he wants to take back all the Warsaw Pact countries. But let me list them for you. Which places were part of the Russian Empire? That is part of the Soviet Union's territory. This includes Ukraine, Belarus, a country of the 3 Baltic states and their neighbors, part of Finland's territory, Moldova, the beautiful state of Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and the 5 Central Asian countries. These are what Putin considers, in his perspective, historically and culturally part of Russia. And historically, these are not truly independent countries. But you took advantage of the Soviet Union's collapse to sneak away like a dog from your home. We have chips on you. When the house was in chaos, you ran away. Now we need to pull you back. This is what Putin says. Give me 20 years. He and my people, I will return a great Russia. From Russia, the great revival of the Russian nation, we must take back these places. It will not stop with taking Ukraine.